Somewhere along the way, Stoicism got lost. Cold showers, steak on a chopping board with eggs and honey next to it. 4 a.m. wake ups and sitting inside of an ice bath with your jaw clenched while someone stands there filming you, telling you how well you're doing. Journals covered with leather and written in with fountain pens, and the curated, optimized and aesthetically serious life of a person who has read half of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations once and turned it into their entire brand. That is what Stoicism looks like in 2025, 2026, 2024, all of these years. It's getting worse and worse. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what Stoicism actually ever was. Stoicism was not born inside of a productivity app or a memento mori calendar. It was not developed by men with disposable income and morning routines and flying to Miami just to go to a club and then go on a morning run and call it discipline. It was developed in the ancient world by people who needed it, not as a lifestyle upgrade, but instead as the only honest framework available for them to survive conditions that they could not change, did not choose, and had no exit from. Marcus Aurelius gets the most attention when you think of Stoicism, when you talk about it. He was the emperor of Rome. He was the most powerful man in the world, writing private notes to himself about virtue and impermanence. And yes, his meditations are genuine. It's genuinely a beautiful book to read. And his practice was real. But Marcus Aurelius practicing Stoicism from the throne or the pedestal of the Roman Empire is not the same thing as Stoicism under pressure. He had every resource available and chose difficulty voluntarily. That is the admirable thing about Marcus Aurelius. However, it is not the full picture of Stoicism. For the full picture, you need to mention Epictetus. Epictetus was born as a slave. Not metaphorically, not as a slave to the system, not anything of that sort, not as someone who felt trapped by their circumstances, but instead as an actual genuine slave, owned by a Roman master with no legal personhood or no rights or no exits. His master, a man named Epictetus, broke his leg deliberately. The accounts do vary on whether or not it was a test or casual cruelty, but Epictetus said calmly as the bone snapped, "I told you that would break, now it is broken. What would you like to do next?" That was not a morning routine. That's not what Stoicism is nowadays, is it? You would never have thought of that when someone mentions they're turning Stoic today. That is a man who took the central Stoic distinction between what is in your control and what is not, and driven it so deep inside himself that not even physical destruction could reach the part of him that was free. Epictetus eventually did gain his own freedom. He became one of the most influential philosophers in the ancient world, barely spoken about today, but still very popular and widely known. His students included emperors, and the core of absolutely everything he taught them came from the specific, irremovable, and completely unoptimized experience of being a person with absolutely nothing. No possessions, no status, no body that belonged to him, no rights, no legal humanity that he had as a slave. Discovering that the only thing that can never be taken away from him was the quality of his own response. That is what Stoicism was built for. That is the definition of a Stoic man. Now, what is actually overlooked, in my opinion, beyond Epictetus, is the peasant Stoic. The peasant Stoic is almost never mentioned in the content or the context of Stoicism. The farmer in the Roman countryside whose harvest failed simply due to the weather. The soldier who had no choice about which war he was sent to or which emperor he had to fight. The woman who lost children to disease in an era before medicine was widely known. The ordinary, the unglamorous, and the completely undocumented mass of people for whom Stoicism was not a competitive advantage for, but instead a survival mechanism. What did Stoicism mean to them? Has anyone ever actually sat or thought about that question? What was Stoicism to the peasant in that ancient era of Rome? Obviously, it wasn't cold showers. Obviously, it wasn't voluntary discomfort as a training exercise. It meant the genuine practice of returning every single day without failure or hesitation to the only question in their life that mattered. What actually is in my control here? What actually can I change about today's harvest, or about what I feed my child, or about how I fight the next soldier? And what of these things are in my control and are not? Not things that I wish are in my control, but what actually is in my control. And the answer to them almost always was far less than they actually wanted or needed to survive. And the practice to them was learning to work entirely within that smaller space, without resentment, without ingratitude, without performance, without disappointment in the world, and without the need for the outcome to validate the effort that they put into it. That itself is the philosophy, not the aesthetic of Stoicism. Now, the indictment of modern Stoicism, stated plainly, is this. The cold shower itself is voluntary. Yes, you are able to stop it at any time, turn it hot, and tomorrow, starting from that day onwards, take normal showers from then on. The discomfort is chosen, controlled, and ends when you decide that it actually ends. In my opinion, that is not a Stoic practice. That is the simulation of a Stoic practice by someone who has never been in the situation or has never faced the kind of involuntary, inescapable difficulty that Stoicism was intentionally designed for. The person who does cold showers and reads some Marcus Aurelius without ever understanding any of the words that Marcus Aurelius written down, and then posts about their discipline and posts on Instagram a quote from Meditations, has never practiced Stoicism. They have practiced the performance of Stoicism. And I'm not here to judge. I mean, it sounds like I am, but in my opinion, the issue is that Stoicism has become so oversaturated that it would have been impossible for me to make a normal video on this without having some sort of provocative or some sort of alternative insight on what Stoicism actually is, because of this oversaturated population of fake Stoicism. And ironically, Stoicism is the exact thing that modern Stoicism was trying to argue against. If that kind of makes sense to you, the performance of Stoicism is the very thing that actual Stoicism, that actual previous historical Stoicism, was designed to fight against. Epictetus did not choose his master to own him. He did not choose to have a broken leg. He did not choose to be a slave from being born or from being a child. He only chose his response, and how clearly and how professionally he gave his response to every situation that was imposed upon him. And that exact choice, that only choice that was available to him, was everything to Epictetus. That is what saved his life. Real Stoicism asks only one thing of you as a person. It does not ask for you discipline. It does not ask for your voluntary hardship or the aesthetic of seriousness. It asks you to draw the line honestly between what you control and what you do not. And then you must release absolutely everything on the wrong side of the line completely. No hesitation, no questions asked. You must release them, and not as a resignation, not as defeat, but instead as the only rational response to reality as it actually is, rather than you need it to be. Your reputation, seeing as it is not in your control, I think you must release it. Other people's opinions upon you, seeing as they are not in your control, yet again, you must release it. The outcome of your work, seeing as it is not fully in your control, you must release it and focus only on the inputs of the work. What remains after that huge release is quite small, as a matter of fact. All there is left is your attention or your effort or the quality of your response to whatever arrives in your life. And in my opinion, that is the entire territory of Stoic practice. Epictetus built his philosophy from the inside of a slave's body with a broken leg, and ended up with a response so much freer than anyone who has ever lived will be able to procure, if that's even a fucking word. I think I'm thinking of a word in my head. The cold showers themselves are optional, and the question that Stoicism is actually asking you, that I'm going to leave with you and that I hope you go and actually think about for a minute, is what are you still gripping onto with your life that was never yours to begin with? And what of those things are yours and are not yours completely? That's all you need to ask yourself to understand yourself as a person. That's it. That's the whole thing. So go answer that question. Please do it for your sake, and stop thinking you're a Stoic.